My kid loves to play cleanup with the basket for her blocks. But unfortunately, it's a bit loud, and the littlest blocks fall out from between the bars. I decided to give it the basket treatment with the scraps for my hexie quilt, and they look like a matched set. I got this little basket originally from Target, and I liked it because it's pretty tall and it holds a lot, plus this lid doubles as like a tabletop. Now, if you wanted to make it sadder or beigeier, you could, but I decided to use the scraps from my quilt, and I cut them to be 2.5 inches wide so that they would match with the jelly rolls that I also have left over. When I had them all cut, I sorted them into their little color stacks so that I could get them into a nice ombre rainbow ready to sew up. I had long pieces and short pieces, but it didn't matter because I just sewed them all one after the other to make a gigantic snake. If you wanted, you could do less of this by choosing just one color, but then it would look less like an art piece and more like home decor. I had all of my colors prepped, and then I ironed them so I could make them into bias tape. I first folded the 2 edges into the middle, and then I folded that over one more so that all the frayed edges were hidden inside. Now, you could avoid this altogether by just doing ribbon, but I didn't have any, and I wanted to do this for cheap, so I used my scraps. When I had all of my colors nice and ironed, I took them to the sewing machine one last time to sew them shut. I just did one long seam all the way down that edge to sew them shut. It's basically DIY ribbon, except fluffier in case of head bonks. My lovely rainbow ribbon was ready, and so I dumped out all the toys and took it downstairs during nap time so that I could weave it. Oof. Now, while the smallest blocks that I have may be small, they are not so small that they can go through the very bottom here. And to avoid the bunching that would happen if I did on a circle, I just did on the outside of this ring. I gave myself plenty of slack and secured it randomly to the inside. You could use anything I used to pin because I was in the mood of handling all of that when I was done weaving. Now, I had to skip 1 bar every rotation, otherwise they would line up. This is because I was using one long strand and there were an even amount of spokes. If I had used a new ribbon every rotation, I wouldn't have had to do this, but then I also would have had to secure all those ribbon ends together. If I hadn't skipped one, they would have all lined up and eventually started bunching. But because my fabric was so random anyway, it just kind of looks fun and you can't even tell. Now, to make it more manageable, I did cut my snake up in a few spots. You don't have to do this, you'll just have to pull more through every time you weave. And whenever I got to an end, I would just secure a bunch of slack with a pin as I had before. Then I'd give the next strip a bunch of slack in the same exact spot and continue on. When I finished all of my weaving, I went back to all of these spots and then I sewed them together really quick with a needle and thread and trimmed off the extra, and it's fine, totally strong enough. And then every once in a while I would go through and tighten the weave down. Because I was looking for a colorful, bunchy fabric look anyway, it didn't really matter that I had way too long of a fabric snake. I also wouldn't have minded if I didn't have a strip that was long enough. I only needed the bottom of the basket to be leak-proof, and I thought it would be kind of cute to have just the bottom finished, but I got really zealous about my colors. Anyway, when I finished, I just folded over the extra bit of fabric and secured it a couple times with a needle and thread. I did the same thing with that very first edge of the strip at the bottom. Then it was finished and I refluffed it, and it was kind of beautiful. It goes great with all of the rainbow toys that she has in her play area, and now it is a lot quieter and holds all of the blocks in tight. I love a good rainbow ombre, I love a good stash buster for my fabric, and now we are cleaned up.